Grandma?
Is that your mother?
No, she works for us.
Tunde, what did you just say?
Back to the past. Long before the cathedral lights, before the white tuxedo, before the polished smiles and the soft choir echoes of Lagos, there was morning, not the kind that arrives gently, but the kind that slaps the earth awake. At 4 o'clock, when the sky was still a heavy cloth pulled over the city, Mama Ifeoma was already up. She moved quietly through her one-room home, careful not to wake the neighbors whose walls pressed close like tired shoulders. The air smelled of last night's charcoal and dried pepper. Her knees complained the moment she stood, but she didn't pause long enough to let the pain win. She washed her face with cold water, tied her wrapper tight around her waist, and wrapped her scarf the way she always did, simple, secure, practical. She did not own clothes that begged for attention. Her fabrics were faded, her sandals worn thin, yet everything was clean. That was her quiet pride. If life insisted on being hard, she insisted on meeting it with dignity. Outside, the street was still asleep, generators humming far away and the occasional motorcycle passing like a ghost. Mama Ifeoma balanced a tray on her head with the ease of a woman who had spent decades carrying the weight of the world without dropping it. On that tray were small things, groundnuts, boiled corn, sachets of water, sometimes oranges when they were cheap enough. Nothing fancy, nothing headline-worthy, but those small things fed her son's future. His name was Tund. When Tund was a boy, he believed his mother could do anything, not because she said it, but because she lived it. She woke, she worked, and came home with tired hands yet still found strength to touch his forehead, ask about school, and press extra food into his bowl even when her own stomach was hollow. Hunger, she had learned, could be endured, but watching your child go without was a different pain. So she made silent bargains with herself. If she could afford one piece of meat, it went to him. If rain flooded the market and ruined sales, she walked home soaked yet smiling when he asked if she sold anything, answering small, always manageable, always a lie wrapped in love. Some days Tund walked to school with holes in his uniform, and she sewed them at night under a flickering bulb with a needle so old it felt part of her fingers, stitching while her back curved and her mind ran ahead to the next day of survival. When school fees came due, she borrowed, negotiated, sold hours of her life, sometimes eating once a day and pretending it was normal, wearing the same wrapper for months, because buying another would cut into the folded Naira bundle hidden in a tin beneath her bed. She did not call it savings, she called it purpose. Market women teased her for loving the boy too much. She only smiled, because some love does not feel like a choice, it feels like destiny. Tund grew sharp and observant. Teachers praised him, neighbors admired him, and Mama Ifeoma heard every compliment like a prayer answered, dreaming beyond their street. When he earned a scholarship to a city university, the news moved through the compound like music, and she cried alone that night, not from sadness but relief. The fear poverty would swallow him loosened its grip, yet struggle continued. Books, transport, rent, invisible costs, and she became the invisible sponsor of a dream not built for women like her, sending money whenever she could, sometimes weekly, sometimes late with apology messages, but always something. In the city, Tund changed as sons do around different lives. At first he called daily. Mama, I ate. Mama, I got my grades. Mama, pray for me. His voice soft with safety, and she listened as though hearing wealth itself. Then calls shortened, not from lack of love at first, but because the city was loud. Time expensive, language polished, and slowly he built a second version of himself that did not come from her market stall. She noticed small shifts, fewer details, laughter at her reminders, smoother speech, unfamiliar voices in the background, friends, classmates, maybe girls, laughter bright yet far away. She told herself distance was normal. Growth always moves away from those who planted you. Yet one day sending money, her hands shook not from age but fear he might forget the road behind him. Still she sent it, always. She stood in bank lines under heat, watched others live as if the city belonged to them, handed over worn notes, watched the teller count, shoulders dropping in relief when transfer succeeded, another week secured, another unseen sacrifice. She didn't need applause, only his arrival. And he did arrive. Internship, job, promotion, suits even off work, nicer apartment, photos in places she'd only seen on TV, dim restaurants, glass lounges, gatherings untouched by hunger. Visiting the village in a head-turning car, neighbors praised her success, and she smiled, yet felt stiffness in his hug, a distance as if closeness might stain who he'd become. He avoided childhood friends' eyes, corrected his accent, grew quiet around those who knew his past. She never accused him, never demanded gratitude, only loved through sacrifice and silence, saving again for his future wedding, contributing, even if small, folding money into the tin and whispering each time, "This is for my son's future." Years sharpened the irony. The more she lifted him, the more he looked down, not openly, but in how he managed her place in his life. Call before visiting, the neighborhood too stressful, money sent instead of presents. He believed money proved care. She knew money could buy food, but not closeness or honor. She understood his distance in a simple sentence when she asked to meet his friends. "Mama." You wouldn't understand them, polite words, closing door. She nodded because she was a mother who spent her life making sure he never felt small, even while he made her invisible. Somewhere between promotions, photos, polished rooms, and the world he left, Tund carried a new shame, not for what he'd done but where he came from, moving as though his past could embarrass him, as though the woman who woke at 4 every morning to feed his dreams was a detail to edit out. As her son grew successful and settled into a world of wealth and privilege, he began to feel ashamed of his own origins. The bride's family belonged to the comfortable class in Lagos, not just comfortable, but visible, the kind of family whose name carried weight in rooms where decisions were made, whose parties were talked about and whose photos were posted, whose friends never had to ask the price of anything. They lived in a gated estate where the streets were clean and quiet, where security guards greeted visitors by surname and gates opened like permission. A home that smelled of air freshener and polished wood instead of frying oil and dust. Walls holding framed portraits instead of calendars. A living room soft like a hotel lobby with thick curtains, smooth couches, and shining floors, always ready to be judged. This was the world Tund had been chasing, and now he stood inside it as if he belonged. He never said it aloud, but he moved differently there, shoulders back, voice steady, laughter controlled. The version of himself he always wanted to be, self-made, untouchable, new. The bride, Amara, was everything Lagos admired, poised, soft-spoken but not weak, elegant without effort, the kind of woman whose presence made men straighten and women glance twice. She was kind too, kind without needing an audience, speaking to waiters with respect and asking questions she actually waited to hear answered. It was part of why Tund loved her, and part of what frightened him, because Amara noticed things, especially his silence, not in conversation but in his story. She knew his career, goals, schools, company, promotions, friends, lounges, travels, yet barely anything about his mother. At first she thought it was privacy, maybe grief, maybe something complicated. Then she met Mama Ifeoma briefly during the engagement visit. Mama Ifeoma arrived early with a small bag of gifts she could hardly afford, wearing one of her better wrappers and a carefully ironed scarf, her face bright with that tired joy only mothers carry, greeting everyone respectfully and speaking softly as if her voice might take too much space. Tund stayed close to her the entire time, not like a son protecting his mother from rudeness, but like a man guarding a secret from being seen too clearly. When Amara's mother asked what she did, Mama Ifeoma smiled and answered honestly, "I sell in the market." Small things. Amara's mother nodded politely. No insult, no harsh words. But she looked away too quickly, and that small movement landed in Mama Ifeoma's chest like a stone. Tund noticed it too, and responded by filling the air with achievements and plans, keeping attention on himself while his mother's story faded into background noise. In that moment, Mama Ifeoma realized something she didn't want to believe. Her son was trying to become a man with no roots. After that, Tund shaped his image even more carefully, speaking to Amara's father like a businessman, to her friends about his lifestyle and ambition, telling stories where he was the hero and rarely mentioning his mother, using safe phrases like, "She's fine, she's simple, she's used to her ways," harmless words that sounded like distance. Sometimes Amara gently asked if his mother would attend the wedding. "Of course," he answered quickly, his tone ending the subject. From miles away, Mama Ifeoma felt that warning. His calls became functional: health, money, instructions not to stress, never feelings, never loneliness. When she said she wanted to come early to help, he paused briefly and replied, "It's already handled," as if love could be outsourced. She swallowed disappointment and agreed. A week before the wedding, she received a message from an unknown number, a location pin and a note. "Mama, please come early. We want to greet you properly." It was Amara. Mama Ifeoma felt the gentleness her son's words lacked and replied she would come. The wedding day arrived like a storm of beauty. Lagos moved differently. Convoy cars, gleaming outfits, perfume and expensive oils in the air, photos taken before entering. The cathedral shone in stained glass light, flowers climbing pillars, white fabric across pews, choir voices floating softly. Tund arrived in a perfect white tuxedo, friends calling him Big Man. Amara entered radiant, her family proud in front pews. Everything said success. Everything said arrival. And outside, Mama Ifeoma stood alone. No entourage, only her small handbag and a racing heart. She wore her oldest important day outfit, faded but clean, carefully pressed, sandals scrubbed nearly new. She breathed deeply and stepped toward the cathedral doors. She could hear the music before entering. She could feel the difference. As she stepped inside, the air changed, not because words were spoken, but because eyes were. Glances, longer glances, whispers behind hands, a phone subtly angled toward her. She felt the invisible spotlight, quiet but sharp, tightened. Her grip on her bag and walked with dignity, though her steps slowed slightly. The pain of knowing the room was measuring her without the right clothes to pass the test. She searched for her son's face and saw him in the glow, perfect and distant. She told herself she would not ruin his day, yet her chest tightened because she sensed something she didn't want to name. The same eyes judging her. Might be the same eyes her son had learned to fear. As she stepped into the cathedral, the weight of the guests' judging stares made her pause. The groom publicly denied her. It didn't happen with a scream or a slap, not even with cruelty loud enough to announce itself. It happened the way most betrayals do, quietly, casually, as if the damage didn't matter. Mama Ifeoma had just taken 2 steps deeper into the cathedral when she heard controlled laughter from the front, the kind people use when trying to look relaxed in expensive clothes. She followed the sound and saw Tund near the altar, tall in his white tuxedo, surrounded by men whose suits fit perfectly and whose smile suggested life had always been kind. For a moment her heart softened. There he was, her son, alive, clean, successful, standing where she once only imagined. She wanted to wave like mothers do in crowds, but something told her to stay still, to take up as little space as possible. She moved toward an empty place along the aisle as perfume and flowers filled the air, and the lights made her humble outfit look older. Then it happened. A man from Amara's family leaned toward Tund, smiling politely, curiosity sharp in his eyes. Mama Ifeoma couldn't hear the first words, but she saw the glance toward her and the question forming before it was spoken. Tund followed the gaze. His face tightened for a fraction of a second. Not surprise, but calculation, and she recognized it because she knew her son's face through fevers, anger, exams, and hidden hunger. The man spoke softly, and Tund replied calmly, almost politely, a faint smile on his lips. "No." She works for us. For a moment her mind refused to translate the sentence. She works for us. Not my mother. Not the woman who raised me. Just a role, a label, a way to erase her without saying erase. The cathedral remained beautiful, the choir humming, guests seated, but something invisible snapped. Blood rushed to her face, then left her cold. She gripped her small handbag and forced her shoulders straight, though her body wanted to disappear. She did not move, because when a mother is humiliated, she still protects the child, the moment, the family's dignity, even when her own is stripped away. So she swallowed everything rising in her throat. A few rows away, Amara turned sharply, hearing the sentence as if spoken into her chest. Her shock was not about poverty, but about something more dangerous. A man denying his own blood for approval. Her eyes met Mama Ifeama's across the cathedral, white silk and faded fabric, and she saw dignity. Not anger, not tears, only stillness like stone, that made it unbearable. Whispers rippled through the pews, glances turned away and back again, until a child's voice cut through the air. "Grandma?" The word rang clear. A boy leaned forward, recognizing what others pretended not to see. The murmurs died, the choir faltered, the organ thinned, and silence spread. In that silence, Mama Ifeama heard her breathing. Tund heard what he had done, and Amara watched him like a mask had fallen. He tightened his jaw, keeping his smile, shifting his body as if blocking truth itself. But truth was already there, standing in the aisle in faded fabric, holding dignity like a shield. Mama Ifeama did not speak, not because she had nothing to say, but because sometimes the strongest response is refusing to beg for the respect you deserve. Amara breathed slowly, her bouquet trembling, and what changed inside her was not judgment about wealth, but judgment about character. It wasn't the poverty that shook her, but the denial. The bride's father thanked the groom's family. He rose from the front pew like a man accustomed to being heard. Mr. Okafor did not need a microphone to command attention, but one was already waiting. He adjusted his cufflinks with practiced calm and stepped toward the altar as guests straightened in polite expectation. His deep, regal agbada did more than clothe him, it announced status. The choir quieted. Even the air seemed to wait. He smiled warmly at the crowd, then turned to Tund. "Today," he said smoothly, "we celebrate two families becoming one." Guests nodded, grateful for something safe and familiar. "We honor love, we honor commitment, and we honor the people who raised the man standing here." He paused. "The groom's family for bringing him into this world and shaping him into the man he is today." The words were standard, wedding courtesy, but in this cathedral, on this day, they landed differently. Everyone had heard the lie. Everyone had heard, "She works for us." And now Mr. Okafor was publicly extending honor to the very family Tund had tried to erase. Tund's smile twitched. Amara's fingers tightened around her bouquet. Mama Ifeoma remained in the aisle, still, her worn handbag hanging from her hand like a weight she had carried for years. Mr. Okafor continued warmly, "We are grateful for the sacrifices made, for the support given, for the foundation laid," then lifted his chin. "And on behalf of my family, I would like to acknowledge everyone who contributed to making today possible." Guests began to clap softly, expecting thanks to planners and sponsors, but Mr. Okafor did not look at them. He looked toward a man seated along the aisle with a folder on his lap. The man stood immediately mid-50s, dark-skinned Nigerian, clean-shaven, serious behind thin glasses, the kind of presence that suggested legal documents nearby. He stepped forward calmly. Tund's eyes narrowed. Amara looked confused. Mama Ifeama's gaze lifted slowly, as if she already understood. "Good evening," the man said evenly. "My name is Barrister Adeyemi. I represent the Okafor family." A murmur rippled. "Why would a lawyer speak at a wedding?" He opened the folder with deliberate care. "Before the ceremony proceeds, there is a financial matter that must be addressed." Awkward laughter rose, then faded when he did not smile. "This event has been organized under contractual payment schedules with multiple vendors' venue, decor, catering, security, music. As of this afternoon, the final payment tranche scheduled for release has been suspended. Suspended did not belong in a wedding. Phones lowered. Whispers rose. Tund blinked. Amara's lips parted. The liar continued calmly. It is my duty to inform the family that the funds used to finance this wedding did not originate from the groom. Tund's smile froze. The air turned dangerous. He flipped a page. The payments were initiated from a personal account held under the name Mama Ifeoma Adekunle. Silence slammed down. A woman gasped. A man muttered, "No way." Amara's eyes shot to Mama Ifeoma, who stood exactly as before in faded fabric and quiet dignity. Only now the room understood in one brutal moment that the woman they had judged had paid for the day they were sitting inside. Tund swallowed hard, fists tightening at his sides. Barrister Adeyemi continued, voice calm as a blade. Following an incident that occurred in this cathedral, a request was submitted to the bank to place an immediate hold on the remaining transfers. The account holder cited emotional distress and reputational harm. Guests turned toward Tund, toward Mama Ifeoma, toward Amara, stitching the story together with their eyes. The remaining payment has been frozen. Effective immediately. The cathedral erupted, not in screams at first, but in chaos. Frozen? What about the reception? Is this real? She paid for the wedding? Chairs scraped. Phones rose again, this time to capture disaster. Bridesmaids stared in horror. Groomsmen whispered urgently. Tund's head snapped from side to side like a trapped animal. His polished pride cracked in plain sight. He looked at Mama Ifeoma, truly looked at her. For the first time that evening, not with embarrassment, but with fear. The narrative was no longer his. He was no longer the self-made man in white. He was a boy exposed. Mama Ifeoma still did not speak. Her silence cut deeper than any shout. Across the altar, Amara's face shifted from shock to something heavier, betrayal. And Tund went pale. Not just surprised pale, but drained, sickly pale. The kind of color that leaves a man when he realizes the room has turned, the truth has stood up, and the life he pretended he built alone has just been publicly credited to the mother he tried to call a servant. The groom's face drained of color. The bride took the microphone. She didn't grab it like someone trying to win a fight. Amara lifted it the way a judge lifts a gavel, slow, deliberate, carrying a decision already made. Her fingers were steady, though her breathing was fast. Her veil framing her face like a halo, but there was nothing soft in her eyes now. This wasn't bridal nerves. It was clarity. The cathedral still buzzed with confusion, whispers, planners murmuring, a bridesmaid crying, someone asking about the reception. Yet when she raised the mic, the room hushed, sensing something final. She didn't look at the crowd first. She looked at Tund. He stood frozen in white, confidence leaking from him, face pale, lips parted without sound, suddenly smaller than his tuxedo. Her voice came calm, not pleading, not trembling, a calm like the ocean before it swallows something. "If you can deny the woman who raised you," she said, precise and sharp, then paused, a brutal pause because everyone knew she meant the woman standing in the aisle with faded wrapper and unbroken dignity. "You can deny anyone." It wasn't performance. It was verdict. A tremor moved through the crowd. Tund tried to speak. Amara, but she didn't argue or negotiate. She simply lifted her hand. The ring caught the cathedral light. For a second the room held its breath. Amara slid it off slowly, no shaking, no drama, just the quiet removal of a promise, metal brushing skin louder than chaos. She stepped forward and placed it into his open palm, not thrown, not slapped away, returned. "This isn't about money," she said softly. "It never was. This is about character." Tund stared at the ring as if it had weight he couldn't lift while his friends whispered urgently to fix it, but nothing could be fixed in front of 100 witnesses. She glanced toward her father, whose calm face held cold disappointment, her mother reaching silently for a tissue, bridesmaids rigid in shock. Amara faced the room. "I'm sorry," she said, Not regret, but responsibility. This ceremony ends here. Reaction rolled through the guests. Some stood to leave, others leaned forward hungry for scandal. Elders shook their heads knowingly. Tund stepped forward at last, panic breaking through. "Amara, please," he began. But she looked at him once more, not hatred, not triumph, but pity, the last thing a proud man survives in public. She turned and walked down the aisle, veil trailing behind like goodbye, bridesmaids following uncertainly. The crowd parted, unsure what else to do with a woman leaving her own wedding. Someone whispered she was really leaving. Another answered how could she stay. Tund remained holding the ring like evidence, looking toward his groomsmen, who now looked helpless. Then his eyes found Mama Effiama. She stood unchanged in faded fabric, the only person not performing. His gaze pleaded. Her face did not soften. Love without boundaries becomes permission for cruelty. For a moment it seemed she might speak, claim her place, but she didn't. She simply turned. No speech, no curse, just a quiet closing door. As she walked out, the room watched her with a respect born from realization and shame. People moved aside as if she carried something sacred. Tund stumbled a step after her. "Mama, wait!" He called, voice breaking, but she didn't stop. Step, step, step. Each step said what words did not. "You don't humiliate me." He stood searching for escape, but there was none. Not from guests, family, cameras, or truth. A moment ago he stood like a king. Now he stood stripped of every mask. The choir didn't sing. The organ didn't play. The air held its breath. Tund remained at the front alone in his white tuxedo, the ring in his palm, watching the two women he underestimated, one leaving his future, the other leaving his past, and he finally understood the silence had never been weakness, only a warning now made real. The groom stood alone at the altar. The groom returned to the village to find his mother. The drive felt longer than ever before as Lagos faded behind him, its polished buildings, gated estates, and curated success shrinking in the rearview mirror. The highway stretched dusty and uneven toward the village he once swore to outgrow. He played no music and took no calls. For the first time in years, nothing drowned out his thoughts. He remembered the cathedral, the silence, Amara's eyes, the ring in his palm, but most of all his mother's back as she walked away. Not hurried, not broken, just done. By the time he arrived, the sun leaned low across the familiar dirt road. Children played near the well, women fanned themselves outside their homes, and some recognized his car immediately. "Tund?" someone whispered. He stepped out slowly, expensive shoes gathering dust. The house stood as always, small, modest, its paint long faded, the wooden door closed. He knocked once. No answer. He knocked louder, still nothing. A neighbor stepped outside. "You're looking for your mother?" she asked gently. "Yes." "Is she inside?" The woman shook her head. "She left." The word hit harder than anything in the cathedral. "Left? Where?" "She packed a few things, said she needed peace." She didn't say where. Only that she had done her part. Done her part, as if motherhood were a contract, sacrifice a task with an ending. He pressed his hand against the door, feeling chipped paint beneath his fingers, remembering helping her patch it, holding the ladder, complaining about the smell, remembering laughter. The yard was silent. No tray against the wall, no charcoal stove, no humming, just emptiness. And at last the full weight of his words settled into his bones. "She works for us." He had reduced a lifetime of sacrifice to a role, traded truth for approval, and lost both. He sat on the concrete step, face in his hands. Dust ignored his tuxedo, the village ignored his status. The world he tried to impress was gone, leaving only memory, her waking before dawn, rough hands pressing money into his palm, telling him, "Go far, my son." She never said forget me, never asked to be hidden, only asked for his success, and he gave her shame instead. Children ran past laughing until one asked, "Are you crying?" "No," he said, but his voice betrayed him, because he wasn't crying like a child. He was grieving pride, image, and his mother's trust. Evening deepened, lights flickered on, yet the house stayed dark. He finally understood the silence had never been weakness but strength. She had not shouted, defended, or exposed him. She let truth stand and walked away with the only thing fully hers, dignity. He rose slowly, success now hollow, the village suddenly honest. He looked at the door, knowing forgiveness would not be automatic. Some wounds do not heal with apologies. Some bridges collapse in silence. The wind moved through the trees, and a truth settled inside him. Some men are ashamed of where they come from. But the greatest shame is forgetting who carried you there.